On the staircase.
One by stairs.
Spotted. Oh, his teammate shot him. Go. He's getting picked up by his teammate.
Two there.
Secure the container.
No, shoot.
Securing the room.
Yeah.
One friendly operator remaining.
I'm gonna try and jump in and fucking...
Bandits on the right side, Cavs on the staircase. Bandits on the right side, Cavs still on the staircase. You can shoot through the wall, maybe hit. Cavs going up. Oh, no. Still there. Cavs going up.
15 seconds remaining. Op 4 last stop standing.
Cavs upstairs. Just get to the
10
room.
seconds left.
Right there.
Protect the bio
Nice.
container.
Nice.
Op 4 neutralized. Mission successful.
That perfect shot.
Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about what exactly makes a tactical shooter a tactical shooter. Like what is a tactical shooter, right? Because lately I've been having tons of discussions on the Rainbow Six subreddit about Siege and talking about that game and how people seem to think that game happens to be like it happens to fit within the genre of tactical shooter, and I disagree strongly. I strongly disagree. And for most of you that have been around my channel for years, especially when I started making the videos for Rainbow Six Siege back when I covered the technical test and the closed alpha, and I basically made my angry rant videos. There was 2 of them, and I was basically trashing the game. I was just completely berating the crap out of Siege for what it was, and how Ubisoft basically ruined the franchise of Rainbow Six. They went in a completely different direction that was even further than what Lockdown in Vegas did, and turned it into another arcade, run-of-the-mill shooter that was disguised as a tactical shooter without actually being one. And I've since learned to accept what the game is. Okay, like I kind of already did back then anyway, because I've always said, and I still stand by this statement. I've always said the game was fun to play. I've never disputed that. My only complaint was basically how it wasn't a true tactical shooter. It's not a true Rainbow Six game. And when Ubisoft makes claims that they're going back to their roots, which means the original Rainbow Six trilogy, trying to appease all the old fans of those games back in the late 90s and early 2000s, naturally one would expect a game to follow suit. And when it goes in the completely opposite direction, even further than the later iterations of the Rainbow Six games, Lockdown in Vegas, it's kind of like a punch in the nads. It's like, what the hell? You've gone even further than you went in the completely opposite direction. You fucked us, basically. You completely fucked us, and you lied to us. And then I still remember in the technical test and the closed alpha, the teams were named Rogue Spear and Raven Shield. And I was infuriated at that. I was like, how you have the gall to name the teams after those games when you deliver us this fucking pile of shit? And, well, I mean, in comparison to those games, it wasn't what we wanted. And, anyway, that's a complete... I've already went on, angry rants in the past, and that's not what this is about, because I really love Siege. Let me just get that out there. I still play it. Like, recently I've been getting back into it, and I've been having fun with it, despite the fact that there's numerous other issues with the game, like netcode and server instability issues and whatever. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about what defines a tactical shooter. Now, some of you guys may not know this, so I'm going to educate all of you today with facts, like literal facts. This is like scientific method type of shit where you cannot dispute it. You can't sit there and be like, well, I feel like this, and no. This is literally what it is. It is what it is. The sky is blue, the grass is green, the sun is fucking hot. That's what this is, okay? A tactical shooter is a game that focuses on combat realism, regardless of what you think. Because there's a lot of people out there, especially on Reddit, where I've had conversations with people who think, and I don't blame them, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you guys are fucking idiots. But I understand where they're coming from, where they think a tactical shooter literally just means a game, like a shooter that requires tactical planning and thinking. But that's not what it is, okay? A tactical shooter is actually the title of a specific subgenre of the first-person and third-person shooter market. And people don't seem to realize that. It's like saying Arma is a milsim. Why is it a mil sim? Because it's a military simulator. It simulates a lot of aspects of the military in a very authentic and realistic way. So a tactical shooter is also its own subgenre. It's its own entity. It's not like, oh, any shooter that's tactical, any shooter that requires tactical thinking and planning and teamwork is a tactical shooter. No, because then literally Call of Duty and CSGO and any other game would be considered a tactical shooter because tactical thinking defines what tactical shooters are. No. A tactical shooter was coined back in 1998 when Rainbow Six, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, the original first game to depict realism in a squad-based, small unit type of counter-terrorist operation. And you were playing as Special Forces, and it was a highly realistic game for the time. And this was always the intention. This was always the intention. Tom Clancy, way back in the day, his, what was his name? There was someone he basically consulted with who was a Navy officer a lot back in the day when they first even started Red Storm Entertainment. And how he was like the CEO, and then Tom Clancy was basically like the guy who would come on and kind of shed light on things. And I mean, he wrote the book, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. The book came out along with the game simultaneously. It wasn't like they made the game after the book was released. They were like in tandem. They were working in tandem. And the whole idea and the philosophy behind those games, behind Rainbow Six mainly, was to make it as realistic as possible. Every other game was about, this, high octane Twitch shooter, Unreal Tournament, Quake, Aliens, whatever, Doom, you got all these crazy games. But this was the first time where they actually took the initiative and decided, look, we're gonna make a game that focuses heavily on realism and gives you that authentic operator experience where you're actually going in, rescuing hostages, or defusing bombs, or just gotta neutralize terrorists. Realism is the key thing there. And when the game shipped, it was the first game ever designated the subgenre title of squad-based tactical shooter. And that is how it's been defined ever since. A tactical shooter is simply referring to that type of game. A realistic, close quarters and open-ended first-person shooter. Because Ghost Recon followed up shortly afterwards, and that tried to go in a different direction. Instead of Rainbow Six being all close quarters and tactical, they wanted to go Special Forces, open environments, open world, running around, completing objectives, commanding squads, however you wanted. And that's what they ended up doing. And then, of course, another company decided to take on the reins and created SWAT 3. And then SWAT 4 came out shortly afterwards. Well, not shortly, but, a few years later. The point is, those games, like that genre, focuses on realism, on combat realism, as realistic as you can get. And the thing you got to remember is back in the late 90s, all right, the technology they had available at the time, that was as realistic as you can get. Nowadays, we have insane technology in the gaming industry to be able to achieve even far more realistic and high fidelity realism and authenticity that cannot be achieved by games back then. We have the technology now that Red Storm Entertainment dreamed of back in the late 90s when they were developing Rainbow Six. Because you can listen to documentaries. Not documentaries, but interviews, like just a bunch of stuff where the developers themselves were talking about ideas they've always had, like using proper ballistics and modeling things in a way that actually felt real. And it really, and now we have this technology and can actually be used without any problems. Like back then, it was possible. They didn't mention you can use real projectiles. The issue they had was performance. It was hard on the systems back then. So they couldn't really achieve what they wanted to. But they pushed it as far as they could. We got a classic, an absolutely iconic classic example of a tactical shooter. And we've had many others since then, in different variations of style, but ultimately with the same core feature, the core aspect that defines it. Realism. Realism. Okay? If you think a tactical shooter is just about tactical thinking and planning, well then Call of Duty is a tactical shooter. CSGO is a tactical shooter. Unreal Tournament's a tactical shooter. Battlefield's a tactical shooter. Actually, Battlefield's a milsim because apparently, it features full-scale conventional warfare. So I guess that's a milsim, right? Like, no. There are defining aspects on how things are achieved. how the core mechanics are executed to determine what type of game it basically is. And another example, I guess, analogy I can use, it's not really an analogy, but another example I can use to kind of refer to the way things are named, okay? If you think about SWAT teams in real life, what does that stand for? SWAT, Special Weapons and Tactics. And you think about what they do. They're basically law enforcement, so they're police, SWAT. They belong to law enforcement, so they're police officers, but they use special weapons and tactics. That's the difference. That makes perfect sense. However, here in Canada, we have emergency response teams, otherwise known as ERT. Alright? They're just called emergency response teams. That's it. That can literally be used for anything, right? You could be like, oh, an emergency response team. That could be like, you know, that could be paramedics. That could be like, you know, firefighters. Like anything that responds in an emergency can be a team of emergency responders, right? Emergency response team. But in Canada, that's coined specifically for our version of SWAT. Right? In the same way that tactical shooters is defined specifically for that genre of shooter. Realistic combat shooters. Okay? Like, that's what I just want to get across. Because people just, they can't accept it. They can't accept that Rainbow Six Siege, although is a great game and as a competitive arcade-based shooter, there's nothing realistic about it. It's arcade through and through. There's nothing realistic. It is not a true tactical shooter. And whether that hurts your feelings too fucking bad, because that's it. By the literal definition of the word, of the genre, it's not a tactical shooter. Because it doesn't focus on realism at all. It focuses on mechanics that promote competitive play. The thing is though, if you look back at Rogue Spear was highly competitive back in the day. And that game focused on realism as well. And in fact, I find the more realistic a shooter is, the more competitive it is. Because when it's realistic, you're using real-world thinking, real-world tactics. That's why the whole tactical element comes in. That's where tactical and tactical shooter comes from. The fact that you're utilizing real-world tactics in a way that actually benefits the game. You can use these games as a training tool to a degree. Like, let's look at SWAT 4, for example. SWAT 4 was picked up and modded by the Canadian Forces to be used as a training tool. Why? Because it had all the features and mechanics required to do so. And I've played it. I've actually downloaded the mod. I've tried it out. I've actually been able to see like some of the bases I've actually been to in the game. They added some extra features like free look, where like an Arma, where you can actually turn your head and look around, which I wish more mods would do for SWAT 4. The point is, it had everything in place to essentially allow you to have a training tool that can be utilized for real-world application in a video game called SWAT 4 because it's a tactical shooter and is realistic. Their main focus was on realism. Achieving that level of realism allows for some amazing things in gaming. And obviously, not everything has to be super realistic, but the notion that games cannot be competitive and realistic at the same time is absurd. Because they absolutely can be. And like I was saying, it's actually better in many ways. Because one issue that Rainbow Six Siege has that I've found many people just detest is not just related to netcode, but the fact that Peeker's advantage is also related to netcode, and the fact that it's exacerbated because of the server issues, and the fact that the way the animations play in the game and the way the game actually plays is completely different from what you can actually do in real life. So it allows you to achieve these very nonsensical, unrealistic feats that just infuriate gamers. Like, when someone shoots you through the tiniest little hole in a wall, which would never happen because the muzzle would have to fit in that hole, and if you did that, you wouldn't be able to see what the hell you're shooting at. Right? Because, like, the muzzle would fit perfectly in the hole, but the scope would, you know what I mean? Because the bullets come out of the center of your screen. Like, that's another thing that was a problem with Rainbow Six back in the day. Like, they didn't have the technology to make bullets come out of the barrel. Like, I mean Nova Logic pulled it off with the old Delta Force and Delta Force 2. But there were some other limitations that you can actually see in those games where, like, the muzzle of the weapon can't go up or down. When the character looks up and you shoot, it literally has the weapon pointed straight, but the bullets arc straight out of the barrel, going straight up into the sky, looking utterly absurd. That was a restriction at the time because they couldn't actually make that barrel move around while allowing you to fire projectiles out of the barrel. So there's differences. We're talking about technology then compared to technology now. Now we can achieve some seriously impressive shit And no one's taking advantage of that, which is pathetic. I mean, we have games like Squad and Ground Branch who are leading the way, are pioneering what it's like to create a modern-day tactical shooter. You know, Squad is a large-scale conventional warfare-based game. It's multiplayer-focused only. It's heavily based on teamwork and communication, and it has realistic attributes that ultimately turn it into a tactical shooter. Would it be considered a milsim? Absolutely not. It's a tactical shooter because it doesn't go as deep as a game like Arma, for example. Ground Branch, still in development. Of course, this is also a tactical shooter. This is actually what a modern-day tactical shooter should look like, through and through. It's achieving everything in a spectacular way where I'm actually more excited for that than pretty much anything else on this planet. Because if it gets achieved, if it comes to fruition, and it maximizes on its potential, it's going to be probably the most redefining tactical shooter to come out of all time. Because nothing has been done like that ever to this day. Except for maybe America's Army 3. America's Army 3 got pretty close, but not really. Because it was also heavily focused on just multiplayer. There was no real co-op or any aspect to that game that felt like, you know, something better. But anyway, the point is, that's what a tactical shooter is, guys. A tactical shooter is a game that focuses on realism, and Rainbow Six Siege goes so far off the realism scale, I feel like I'm playing, as I said in the game, or on Reddit to other people, I feel like I'm playing a cross of Dota, Call of Duty, and CSGO. And when you watch pro players playing the game, and what's hilarious to me is how people try to tell me, oh, Rainbow Six Siege is tactical and is realistic because you play the game slowly. It's like, really? Have you seen professionals play? Because on the official Rainbow Six subreddit, there are fucking countless GIFs and videos showing obscene plays. Like, Serenity17 on YouTube is a prime example. If you guys ever heard of that guy, he's basically, I don't know if he's actually a pro, I don't know what the hell rank he is, he's probably a diamond or like a platinum 1 at the least. And, you know, the shit he pulls off, like the clutches he pulls off, it's like, you know, this isn't a tactical shooter. He's fucking doing some ridiculous shit that is not possible in the real world in the way he does it. Therefore, it is unrealistic. Therefore, the game is arcade-ish. What is so hard to understand about that? People drop-shotting, crawling around the ground with your sights being perfectly gyro-stabilized. Do you have any idea how impossible that is? You literally cannot crawl on the ground and shoot as accurately as you can in that game. It's actually impossible. It is literally impossible. No one can do that. Drop-shotting, you know, dropping to the prone while shooting perfectly at people's heads, cannot be done in real life, okay? It's impossible. One of the things I actually kind of laughed about, because I was recently watching a video, and I'm actually going to link that video in the description because I want you people to see it. I want everyone to watch it because it's a G4 Tech TV episode from a long time ago. I'm talking like, you know, standard definition CRT, you know, TVs back in the day, you know, people still had antennas for TVs. Like, this is, you know, a long time ago. I was a wee child then. They had a segment on Rainbow Six where they talked about that in Ghost Recon, just about the legacy of Tom Clancy and how he influenced the gaming space and how he basically created a developer studio and they started making these amazing games. And one of the things they mentioned, which actually had me throwing my arms up in the air just going, exactly, I've said this 1,000 times in the past. If you guys remember my Angry Rant video, one of the things I distinctly said, and I'm going to try to quote as accurately as I possibly can, pick up a fucking rifle and walk around with it, and you will see what it feels like to actually move around with a weapon. Because they don't depict that accurately in Siege at all. And that's what I was saying. And what happened back then, when they were developing Ghost Recon, one of the developers actually threw on full kit. Full kit! He went out and got full militarized kit, tac vest, you know, the frag vest, everything, helmet, all of it. And an airsoft rifle, and would run around outside to just see how the arms behaved, how the biomechanics of your body changed based on what you were wearing, how it felt to actually carry that weapon, how it felt to crawl around, move around, all of that, just so we can get it as accurately as possible in the actual game. And it's kind of hilarious because in my, like I said, in my Angry Rant video, that's what I said they should have done. Like, pick up a fucking rifle and do it yourself, and you will see what it feels like to actually walk around with a weapon in your shoulder in close quarters. It's not hard, but you could definitely feel that you don't have the space and maneuverability you do in Siege, or in a lot of games where you can just like face fuck a wall and lean around a corner and then, you know, the barrel just, no. When you realize just how fucking cumbersome you actually are, how like that weapon actually, you know, is up to a meter in front of you. That's a meter in front of you where if you can't walk up to a wall like that, your weapon will bang into the wall. The point is, that's what should have been done. But that was never the intent. Ubisoft lied to us, and that's why I will never forgive them. That's why I still, to this day, will ramble and rant and berate Siege and Ubisoft, you know, fairly consistently if people start talking about the game. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a fine game. I just wish they would have been honest from the beginning. You know, I wish they just would have been like, hey, look, this is what it's going to be. It's not going to be a real Rainbow Six game. It's not going to have a single-player campaign. You're not going to have squad tactics. You're not going to have any of that. It's going to just be like a 5v5 heroes. You get to pick heroes with special gadgets and weapons. And the gameplay is going to be incredibly arcadey and, you know, like Call of Duty and like, just not realistic in the slightest. And that's it. You know, and it'll be competitive. There you go. Okay, cool. That still sounds fun. Thank you. Instead of saying, oh yeah, you know Rogue Spear, you know Raven Shield, you know the original Rainbow Six? Yeah, it's going to be that. And then we get the product and it's like, what the fuck is this steaming pile of diarrhea? Because this is nothing like you said it was going to be. And that's why I get angry when I talk about Siege and people try to tell me, yes, it's a real tactical shooter. It's not. It really isn't, guys. Accept that fact, because by the literal definition, as I've been saying countless times throughout this video, it is not a tactical shooter. Accept it. Just accept it. Doesn't mean the game is bad. I'm not saying the game is terrible. Alright, I'm not going like it's not a tactical shooter because the game sucks. Like, no, it's just that's literally what the definition is. Would you say Battlefield's a milsim? No, you wouldn't. Arma's a milsim. In fact, there are no other milsims. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically just Arma. You know, maybe Operation Flashpoint, but that's a, you know, it's been like simplified and it's not quite as in depth, but it's still close. You know, it's like the console version of Arma. It's still great on PC, minus the, you know, mouse acceleration issues and other problems I mentioned in past videos, but ultimately it's still kind of a milsim. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I really have to say on it. I just wanted to educate you guys on what a tactical shooter really is. What a tactical shooter is. Alright? It's not an arcade game that focuses heavily on unrealistic mechanics. It focuses mainly on realism. And you get realistic tactical play out of it because it focuses on realism. That's the key element there. Oh, and small unit tactics. Better throw that in there just for good measure, because people tend to think that milsim applies to, you know, games like Rainbow Six. No, it doesn't. A milsim encompasses all aspects of the military and simulates all aspects of it, whether it be equipment, vehicles, you know, soldier fatigue, soldier weight distribution, like just literally everything gets accurately represented, and it's on a massive scale, and it's like a sandbox. You can play it any way you want. You can have small unit operations, you can have massive conventional warfare, whatever. Whereas tactical shooters are simplified, just broken down into one aspect, which is simply the special operations type of special operations. You know, the special ops you'd actually go on, you know, as an operator. And it focuses mainly on small unit tactics, not full-scale infantry combat. It's mainly just close quarters, open world, free to achieve how you want. You can have planning. I mean, you don't have to have planning in a tactical shooter, but it definitely helps to solidify that feeling of, hey, I'm actually making a plan. I have my squad. We're going to go in here and get this shit done. And it feels amazing when you can pull that off. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up the video, guys. My name has been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today. Hopefully that clarified some things. Let me know what you think in the description of this video, in the comments of this video. In the description will be the link to the video I was talking about, where it's like, you know, the G4 Tech episode. I highly encourage you to go watch it, because it's really good and interesting and fascinating. It kind of gives, it's filled with nostalgia. You're gonna watch and be like, oh my god, I wish I can go back to those glory days where mice had balls in them and the monitors were big and white, and, you know, CRT 800 by 600 or 640 by 480. And anyway, Windows 98. My god, guys, remember that shit? 95. Ugh. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Leave a comment. Let's start discussions. See what people, you know, I'm curious what you guys think, because I'm not trying to be like, you know, I'm right, this is the way it is, but like literally I'm just going off of information the way it's always been, the facts provided, and that's it. So again, let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you guys on the next one.